OnePlus Watch 3.
Yes. Where was this made?
It was made in China.
Mita in China.
It was Mita in China. Hello and welcome to the Android Police podcast. My name is Daniel Bader.
And my name is Will Sapberg.
Well done.
Fixing my mic.
I'm also fixing my mic.
We're
doing it live. This week on the show, there's a lot of gadget news, so we won't even pretend that it was a slow news week and just start talking about James Bond out of the gate.
Yeah, we're gonna do that
eventually
second.
Get to. Man, this was a fun week. I gotta say,
it was a fun week. If you were only paying attention to tech news, it was a really fun week.
Yeah. So there's a new iPhone, which we'll talk about, the iPhone 16e, with Apple's first modem, which I actually think is the most interesting part because this is the beginning of the end of Apple's relationship with Qualcomm. And as a result, we can talk about what Qualcomm has been doing to buttress its business for the last couple of years. I think it's actually doing quite a good job of it with, moving into ARM-based PCs and custom cores and things like that. But this is 100% the beginning of the end of the relationship with Apple. So that's going to have a big impact on the company. There was a foldable announcement that I am so excited to talk about, the Find N5, which I've been using for a week or so now. I want to hit on why I think this is by far the best foldable ever released.
And then you're going to hear me just cry about it.
With a couple of drawbacks. And the OnePlus Watch 3 got officially announced on the 18th.
Yeah.
This is another surprisingly good product. I had very low expectations for this.
You're wearing one, right?
I am. And
I'm also wearing one.
Completely blown away my expectations from a battery life perspective.
Yeah, it's not, I think they underestimated their battery life. We can talk about it.
Yeah. But for a Wear OS device, this is actually crazy.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then you had an essay talking about how you just don't like your Pixel photos. And I think a lot of people agreed with this. And it's kind of caused a bit of a stir on the internet, which is nice to see. So we'll get to that. And then there's a couple of grab bag things, like the Humane AI pin is no longer. Amazon is shutting down its Android App Store in August, which I have mixed feelings about, considering all the scrutiny on the Google Play Store and Google's monopoly accusations. So if we have time, we'll get to that. But let's start with the iPhone. The iPhone 16e proves that Apple can't keep up with Android phones on a budget. So you wrote
that was my editorial.
This was your editorial on the day that the phone was announced.
My knee-jerk reactions.
And it's not wrong. I mean, this is a $600 phone.
Yeah.
Right? That does not do even close to the number of things on a spec sheet that most $600 Android phones do.
Yeah.
In fact, there aren't a lot of $600 Android phones anymore.
No, but the ones I use, I think the key ones I would use are and it's weird. It was weird writing this essay because it's kind of a tricky time for this, because I want to walk in and be like, well, the Pixel 8a, but the Pixel 8a is about to be replaced probably. Like, all rumors have been pointing to March. We've seen a billion Pixel 9a leaks up to and including this week. But yeah, so that's a $500 smartphone. And then in the $600 range, it's like the OnePlus 13R, which it's weird to compare. Like, there is not a person on this planet who's like, should I buy the iPhone 16e or the OnePlus 13R? That person doesn't exist. Like, OnePlus is too niche of a brand. Everyone's too locked in. And I mentioned that in the editorial, but
what does Samsung have at $600?
The S24 FE.
Yeah. So this is that, right? This is their version of the pared back flagship that has most of what the $800 version has, but just a little bit less.
Yeah. So let's talk about what the 16 is first. 16e is first. And then I'll talk about why I think this is kind of a win for Android. But it's not an SE. I think, right? The SE was always, all three versions of the SE were like Frankenstein monster phones made out of like spare parts they had from previous devices, right? Like it was the iPhone 5S chassis with the specs of the iPhone 6 or whatever, right? Like they just threw a bunch that was for all three generations, although the third generation was kind of just like, we need to move this phone to 5G. So that was pretty much all that was. But yeah, this is like a much more interesting device where it is kind of the iPhone 14, and it did replace the iPhone 14 in Apple's lineup. The iPhone 14 was still on sale officially from Apple for $600. This phone is $600. It's got a very similar design. It's got the notch, but it is a new design. It's got the action button, doesn't have camera control. It's only got one camera lens. The iPhone 14 had two. It seems to be the same main sensor as the iPhone 16. At the very least, like it's a 48 megapixel sensor that they're making a big deal out of. It's a 2-in-1 because you can crop in at 2x. But go ahead.
That does not count.
I'm just telling you what Apple is telling
I don't care what Apple says. This is not a 2x
I agree
camera.
with you. I agree with you. Everybody agrees with you.
Literally any camera can crop to 2x if you want it to.
I agree. I'm just telling you how they're marketing it.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't understand.
That we don't have to concede to.
I'm not conceding to it. But my overall point was more that this seems to be the same sensor as the 16, and that is the same marketing speak they used for the 16. Was that actually you have 2x optical zoom because you can take this 48 megapixel sensor and crop in at 24 megapixels. I disagree, but that is their logic behind it. A lot of people, including Nothing, dunked on it this week. It's silly. It's not new marketing speak for Apple, so I don't totally get the need to dunk on it, but it's silly. I agree.
It's okay. Here's why it's silly.
Go for it.
It's silly because when Apple says that, say, the iPhone 16 can go from 0.6x to 2x with no appreciable loss of quality.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is that there are still two dedicated lenses, right? And those two lenses perform different functions.
Yeah.
With Apple on the iPhone Pro lineup, it can go all the way from 0.6 to 5x, and you can kind of squint. And if you're at 3x, you can and like the larger sensors, you can get away with saying that yes, a 3 or 2x crop photo is usable, right?
Yeah.
But to go out of the gate to lie to your potential buyers about being able to crop at 2x with no appreciable loss of quality when there is literally only one camera sensor on the back, it's deceptive. And in my opinion, doesn't do Apple any favors because yes, fine, if you take a 2x shot and you share it on Instagram, it's going to look okay. But in any other circumstance, it is very obvious that that thing is digitally cropped. And I just don't buy the argument that Apple has done some sort of sensor magic.
They haven't. No.
Pixel
this
binning.
is the same thing. Absolutely
this is the same pixel binning that HTC was doing in 2011, right? Like,
no, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah, okay. I just want to be very clear about this. Like, I use an iPhone for a lot of my day-to-day life.
Including recording this podcast.
Exactly. I'm using an iPhone 16 to record this podcast's video.
Now, are you cropped in at 2x?
No,
I'm just joking. I'm joking.
That's why you can't see my wrinkles.
Yeah,
because it's smoothing all my skin.
Can I say something? Because you brought this up, and I don't want to pivot to my Pixel thing, but I've been thinking about this a lot because I think I mentioned Instagram on my Pixel thing. If I didn't, I thought about it while I was writing it. But like, it's a frequent refrain. I use it. I feel like everybody in tech uses it. Of like, well, sure, it'll look. The camera's fine if you're just posting to Instagram or whatever. I think we need to stop using this language because I think it is giving smartphone makers a pass to just kind of be lazy with what they're doing with their cameras and being like, well, everybody's just posting to Instagram. That everyone just keeps saying they're only using their phone to post to Instagram. So why do we need to do anything else with our smartphone sensors? Like, these are good enough. I really think that logic is part of the reason that cameras have gotten so boring and focus on like software parlor tricks. And the Magic Editor can do some pretty impressive stuff, but like at the end of the day, they're mostly parlor tricks, or at the best case scenario, it's like, wow, this thing I might have done in Photoshop 10 years ago, I'm doing on my phone now. Like, but that's about it. Anyway, just a pet peeve of mine that you kind of poked at, and I was like, I want to mention this.
Yeah, I think you're probably right with that. It's also true that most people post to Instagram. So,
No,
like,
I
what do you
agree,
do?
but can't we ask for? Can't we demand more?
We
Shouldn't
can
we
like
demand more?
there are folks who use their photos for more things. I agree. But like, where do most of your photos end up? They end up on Google Photos
They end up in Google
or
Photos. I don't even
some
post to Instagram that much.
social network.
Yeah,
I send a lot of photos on WhatsApp or
sure.
Telegram, right? Like, but it's very rare that I blow up any of my mobile photos anymore. Straight up. If I'm printing a photo, I'm
Yeah,
embarrassed to say it's with like a Fuji Instax,
same.
you
Absolutely.
know?
I have one on my other desk over there. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's because there's something fun about it, but also because whatever imperfections you're gonna find in that photo are not gonna show up on a. Yeah, I even have the like wider one, the like larger format one, and it's still like only a 3-inch photo or whatever. You're not gonna see anyway. The 16e. That's pretty much it, though, right? Like, there's not much else to say. It's got the A18. I think that's important that it has the same chip that's in the 16, which is why I think Apple decided to call this the 16e instead of the iPhone SE
iPhone
fourth
SE
gen.
like 4th gen, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's it. I think a lot of it is that this just might be a 4 phone lineup now or 5
I think
phone
so.
lineup going forward, right?
I
If you
think so.
think about how Apple we're not quite at the middle period of the release cycle,
Yeah,
but we're close, right? March will be 6 months since the iPhone 16's launched.
yeah,
And if you take that logic, this will coexist with the iPhone 17 lineup for a good half year, if not more.
well, that's we don't know what the is this an annual launch? Do they launch a 17e next February, next March, or is this an SE situation where they needed a device similar to the third gen SE? They needed to bump it up to 5G. With the 16e, did they need a low end or low cost, quote unquote, low cost, because it's $600, but a cheaper device that could still
Mhm.
technically do the Apple Intelligence stuff they're shipping, which is why this phone has the A18 chip in it. Now, I don't think any of that stuff is worth it, but that's from Apple's point of view, that's the logic, is that they need every iPhone they're selling to offer Apple Intelligence features.
So I don't think this will be an annual refresh.
Yeah.
The fact that it's the iPhone 16e does not mean that it'll be updated on an annual basis.
Yeah.
Specifically because Apple sells the iPhone 15 and until yesterday the 14
Yep.
brand new
Yeah.
mid-cycle for years, right? Like that's not an issue.
No.
And I don't think it'll be a problem to say, hey, the iPhone 16e is still good value in 2027 when the iPhone 18 launches, right?
And actually, that's a real quick. I want to say you're right. The iPhone 15 does not support Apple Intelligence, so I am wrong. They are still selling an iPhone that doesn't
Yeah.
support, which is so you can pay $100 more for the 15 and get like an additional like an ultra wide camera lens, but then not get Apple Intelligence. Maybe actually the right decision, but whatever, we'll get there.
But the iPhone 15, isn't that an A16 chip? Didn't it
Yeah,
skip the
it is.
17?
It
That's
did.
why it doesn't support Apple Intelligence.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
But it comes in colors, comes in fun. You can get it. I mean, sort of. The 15 colors were terrible, but it's not just black and white, which is what the 16 is.
did the iPhone 15 have a what's it called? The dynamic island? No,
Yeah.
right? It's a
No, it did.
notch. It
No, it did.
did.
It had. Yeah, that was the first time. The 14
The
the
14
14 was the
Pro
last
was the okay,
regular.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that I mean, like this doesn't have a dynamic island,
No.
whatever, right?
Mhm.
I think this is a more confusing iPhone lineup than it should be because you get
Agreed.
like you get things like the action button on the 16e, but you don't get it on the 15.
Yep.
You don't get Apple Intelligence on the 15, but you get the dynamic island. You
Mhm.
get the option of a bigger iPhone 15 Plus if you want it. but the iPhone 16e comes in one size and only 2 colors.
Yep.
It doesn't support MagSafe, which feels weird, but it does have wireless charging.
The MagSafe
So
thing is bizarre to me because the 14 supported
yeah.
MagSafe.
Well, the
Like, it
12, I
doesn't.
mean, every
Yeah,
phone
no, no, no.
since the
I
12 supported
absolutely,
it. Like
absolutely.
it's just strange that this is omitted. And it's not like I mean, obviously the conspiracy theory around incompatibility with the modem has been debunked by now. That was a thing for a couple of days.
yeah,
It's very clear that this was just done for a
cost
cost
cutting.
saving.
Yeah.
But I cannot imagine adding MagSafe support to the iPhone 16e would have cost Apple significantly more. And it
No.
would have added a modicum of consistency that I think the lineup deserves, right? You
Hmm.
it's
I
it's
agree.
almost like the iPads and the Apple Pencils. Like,
I
you
was
shouldn't
just
have
about to
to
bring that up.
think
I'm
about
so
that.
glad we are on the same page here. I was just about to be like, this feels like the pencil where I haven't upgraded my iPad, Daniel, because I have a second gen Apple Pencil and it doesn't work with a modern iPad. And
Yeah,
so if I
and it
upgrade
looks
my
exactly
iPad
the
now,
same.
it's the same pencil, but now I have to either go buy the USB one if I get a cheaper iPad, or if I get like the new Air, I have to go get the Apple Pencil Pro that I don't need. I just want it to take notes. It's like Apple has genuinely lost an iPad sale from me because I'm annoyed that I would have to upgrade an additional $130 accessory, which is a different thing than this, where it's like, why does this one not have MagSafe but the others do? But it's the same thing of like, well, wait a minute. So I have to make a spreadsheet now of like what I am and am not getting because I'm not buying the 16 or the 16 Pro. I'm looking at the 15 or the 16e where my budget is. It's nonsense. And I mean, down to the point where like I'm looking at their iPhone store page, like apple.com/iPhone. And if you've shopped on Apple Store before, you know that when you go to these things, they usually, especially the iPhone one, it's sorted by premium, most premium to least premium at the top of the page, right? So a few days ago, it was the iPhone 16 Pro, 16, 15, 14, and then the compare tab accessories. Now it's 16 Pro, 16, 16e, and 15. But the pricing of that is like 1,000, 800, 600, 700. It doesn't even make sense on their own store page which one you should be selecting to get a premium experience based on the pricing.
Yeah.
I agree with you that this iPhone lineup is kind of a mess now. And you and I, right, people who like are are cursed to just remember all of this knowledge in the back of their head about which iPhone model, which Pixel model, which Galaxy S25 model does what, right? We'll know which one to recommend to friends and family, but like random person off the street walking into the Verizon store is going to have to look at like a bunch of different spreadsheets if they want to make an informed decision on what these devices do. Like it is very silly. Unless you're willing to go all the way up to the 16 Pro, which might be what Apple wants you to do, to look at this and be like, "Whoa, this is way too confusing. Can I just spend an extra $300 and not think about what features I am or am not getting?" Like that
Well,
might be part of it.
I think in the US, it's easier to say that because most people buy a phone on contract and they pay
Right.
a monthly fee. So we're not really talking about $300 or $500. We're talking
No,
about
we're talking about
two,
a
$3
difference
a
over
month,
36 months. Yeah.
24 months usually, right?
No, not now. Now it's 36.
Really?
Yep. All three big carriers have mostly switched to like 36-month payments
Weird.
because you don't need a phone. You now you keep your phone for 3 years. That's what you do.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's just the easier way for them to bring the monthly price down to like a more reasonable thing, because if you did it over 24 months. I think Apple's website still does 24. Like
Yeah.
if you buy it on the Apple payment plan, they're on 24, but obviously it'll be a much higher monthly number.
Anyway, I mean, there's also a couple
We're in
of
the
weird
weeds.
things here. Like this has a 4-core GPU rather than a 5-core GPU.
It is a slightly different version of the A18. It's very odd,
It doesn't
which
support
might be
Wi-Fi
why.
7.
No, I wonder because they're quoting longer battery life in the 16e than the 16, and I do wonder if that comes from just like the fact that it has a one less core. I don't. I,
No,
like,
I
I think
think it's more about the modem efficiency. I think this is
it might be. Yeah.
an efficient, like it'll be an efficient modem, like 100%. And yes, maybe the binned SoC is clocked slightly slower, and we'll get Geekbench scores to back that up.
Yeah.
But truly, I don't think so. I mean, it's nerfed in a couple of interesting ways too. Weirdly enough, like so the max brightness is only 800 nits as opposed to
Okay.
1000 nits.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, it doesn't have ProMotion 120 hertz, doesn't support
Nope.
always on display. The wireless
Well.
charging thing is interesting because
Yeah.
it says on Apple's website that it doesn't support MagSafe cases, but it does.
It
If
does.
like every company other than Apple will make a MagSafe compatible case for this, and it will just work.
Yep.
So I don't know. That's a weird one for me. And then it's always like it's not the latest generation of any like feature that Apple is talking about, right? Like it doesn't have the latest generation fusion sensor and the latest generation, it doesn't have ultra wideband, it doesn't have, these kinds of things. It doesn't support dual carrier HSDPA, which I guess is not a thing you need very much anymore
Right.
because most people just stay on LTE or 5G, but the new modem doesn't support that. I don't know. This is all like very in the weeds,
Right.
but man, like the whole thing just is bizarre to me. So that's what this phone offers. It's $200 cheaper than the iPhone 16. It does have a few notable downgrades, but not enough to like really say that like if I'm suggesting somebody buy the cheapest iPhone, like this is going to be a disappointing decision. I
Yeah.
don't think it is. It'll be fine, right? Like it'll be
No,
fine.
and to a certain extent, so I'm just scrolling through the 16E's store page right now, and pretty far, not super far down, but they have a battery life comparison chart where you can drop down a menu and compare what the iPhone 16E's video playback battery life is compared to other iPhones. And the five listed are the 11, the second gen SE, the 12 mini, and the third gen SE. And I do wonder if the fact that not even like the 13 is in here, like, is this a device that mostly exists partially to test Apple's modem on a less important smartphone, and then partially to try to get these people who are still on iPhone 11, iPhone 12 to upgrade to a device where it's like, okay, you're not jumping from the iPhone 12 to the iPhone 14 because on paper to you that is not a big enough jump to spend $600 on. You're jumping from the iPhone 12 to the iPhone 16e, right? Much bigger jump,
Yeah.
number bigger, right? And to a certain extent, this has a much better chip in it than the 14 did. My dad is on an iPhone 12. We've been talking about when he'll upgrade this year. And to be honest, I was going to have him wait till September, but maybe I just have him get this. Like, this is really all he needs, Like, that might be what we end up doing. And I'm sure that's Apple's plan here.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, this is just Samsung or Apple doing what Samsung does, which is
Yeah.
offering an iPhone at every appreciable price point that it feels comfortable with, right?
Well, and that's where my piece came in, where it's like, but now it's, you'll still be able to find the iPhone 13 maybe through like various MVNOs, right? But
Hmm.
largely speaking, the floor of a new iPhone is no longer $430. It's now 600. And that gives Android a lot of space back to play where they didn't in a post iPhone SE world, where it's like Android, if you have $500 and not $600 to spend on a phone, you are in a mostly Android centric world, like even more than a week ago. The Pixel 8a, soon to be replaced by the Pixel 9a, which is rumored to be at the same $500 price point. The OnePlus 13R, even the S24 FE. Like, there's a lot in here where it's like the S24 FE and the OnePlus 13R get you much larger screens. People love larger screens. We've talked about this, right? They're like that's why they don't make small phones anymore. Gets you more cameras. In some cases, maybe better. Like, we'd have to test the iPhone 16e next to the Pixel 8a or 9a when it comes out, but probably right at the very least, like usually more sensors, always on displays, high refresh rate displays. Like, there's a lot there that you can get. The Pixel 8a and again 9a when it comes will have all of the like Gemini stuff, right? Like, the 9a will probably have pixel screenshots and Pixel Studio, because if it's running on a Tensor G4, I don't see why it couldn't have those things. It gives Android manufacturers a lot more space back to play in that price range. I don't know if that converts to sales necessarily, because I think in 2025, most people are just on the phone that they're on, and they're just going to kind of keep riding that model series as they need to. But I still think that it is good news for companies like Google and Samsung and OnePlus.
Mm. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I also think we can't, as you said, like there's a robust secondhand iPhone market that doesn't exist in the
There
Android
is.
space. You
Yeah.
mentioned, you can buy the iPhone 13. Like the iPhones in general maintain their resale value better than most. So
Yeah.
Apple's still benefiting from that refurbished recycle market, right?
Mhm.
And plus, people are trading in their iPhones to get new ones all the time.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's the
you're
other thing, is that that's the thing that makes talking about smartphone pricing so complicated, is that like you have to factor in trade-ins and at monthly payment plans and all of this stuff. And so at the end of the day, it's like I have to kind of just look at it from the MSRP angle, because otherwise it just gets way too complicated in terms of like, well, okay, but if you break it over 36 months, you're paying 50 cents extra over the Pixel 8a or whatever, right? Like it becomes complicated in a way that like talking about 500 versus $600 is not.
So this phone it goes up for pre-order today, the 21st. It's available
Mhm.
next Friday. I don't know if either of us or anybody at AP will get this device, but
Oh, no, no, no. During this podcast recording, I got approved to review it. So we're gonna have a review.
oh man, all right. Well,
It's
enjoy that
happening.
one.
I'm gonna switch from the 16 to the 16e and probably go, wow, this is basically the same phone.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about James Bond. So
You sent me this yesterday. I had already seen it, but you sent me this yesterday, and I was like, we got to talk about this on the pod. Like
oh,
it's a tech story as much as it's a
it
culture
is
story.
100% a tech story, but
Yeah,
also I didn't just see this yesterday. I got the breaking news report,
yeah.
and I was in Montreal for some meetings earlier this week, and my jaw actually dropped when I saw
Oh,
this
same,
press
same.
release. Like,
Absolutely.
okay, so let's just break down what happened here and
Yeah.
what the precipitating factors were.
I don't even know where to start with this. So, if you know anything about the James Bond franchise, you will be familiar with the family name Broccoli, right? Like, oh god, what was Barbara Broccoli's father's name? I actually can't remember now. Edward, maybe?
I think it's like I think he goes by a nickname.
He Yes, I believe so. Hold on. I need to It
Wasn't it like
was Albert.
Cheddar?
It was Albert. His nickname was Cubby, but this
Cubby,
Albert
right?
Broccoli
Not
was
Cheddar.
the producer of. I love it. You were there with the it started with C.
I
You were there.
remember I remember it was something with a C, but like Cheddar Broccoli is incredible, and I wish his nickname was Cheddar. Cubby Broccoli, Albert
So
Broccoli. Yeah.
Albert Broccoli, Cubby Broccoli, was the producer of James Bond, right? Like Eon Productions had the rights, the creative control over the James Bond films, right? And that was through Sony buying MGM, MGM breaking out of Sony, MGM going bankrupt, Sony still distributing the Craig films. Obviously, Albert Broccoli passed away by this point, but Barbara Broccoli, his daughter, as well as his stepson Michael G. Wilson, who is significantly older than Barbara Broccoli, had taken over the franchise in his stead. Right? They have been pushing this forward. That is what it is. Essentially, James Bond was a family business in a lot of ways, and Amazon came in and bought MGM in 2020. I believe it closed in 2022. But they didn't have, which they thought they did, they didn't have creative control over James Bond. That was still with Eon. That was still with Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson. That is why it took so long for No Time to Die to come out, because Barbara Broccoli put her foot down and was like, it's going to theaters. It's not going to streaming. I don't care. And it's why we haven't had any announcement on a new James Bond casting, despite the fact that they've been looking for 2 years. There was a news report, got a lot of press back in December, that Barbara Broccoli was really annoyed with Amazon executives, that she had gotten pissed off that during one of their initial meetings, they had called James Bond content. And you know what, Barbara? I'm right there with you. I hate that word. I'm right there with you. But basically, and Jules, you have to censor this, but the quote that leaked in December was that she had called Amazon executives morons, or idiots, maybe. Anyway, so all of this to say, fast forward 2 months, and Amazon has spent an additional $1 billion on top of the $8 billion they spent to acquire MGM, which most analysts saw as paying specifically for James Bond. MGM has other properties, but it was James Bond is the thing that makes money.
Can I just interrupt you for a second?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
I just want to put some timelines here
It's
into
tricky.
context.
Yeah.
Right? So Amazon buys MGM in
Mhm.
2021.
Yeah, deal closes in 2022, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Almost like late 2021, early 2022. Okay.
Yeah.
The deal was initially valued in like the $3.5 to $4 billion range.
Yep.
Amazon ends up spending $8.5 billion because it believed in the long-term health, and like it basically just bought it for James Bond.
Yes,
Right?
which I want to point something out, and I am taking this from a podcast that maybe I'll shout out at the end of the show. Maybe that'll be my what's making me happy this week. But I believe the James Bond franchise in its entirety, in its existence since 1962, I think is the first movie, has made about $7 billion. So they paid an additional $1 billion more than the James Bond franchise has made. Period. Most people said that MGM was probably worth like 3 to 4 billion for what it's worth. So Amazon completely overpays on this to get James Bond, and then learns that they still have to deal with the Broccoli's being like, no, we still get to say what happens here. Like you don't have creative control over Bond. That wasn't part of this deal.
Okay, so going back to this bombshell
Yeah.
investigation report thing that got published in the Wall Street Journal on
Yes.
December 19th. That is 2 months ago, almost to the day. Okay. During which Broccoli, as you said, these people are effing idiots.
Yep.
And the two sides are, at the time of the reporting in December, at an impasse. Quote, Amazon needs Broccoli to furnish them with ideas for a new Bond movie, but Broccoli doesn't want to make a new Bond movie with Amazon. The standoff, say people on both sides of the divide, boils down to a clash between the 20th century Hollywood of big screens and big swings and a new entertainment industry ruled by Silicon Valley firms that prize data, algorithms, and streaming subscriptions. Okay. So this is why it's a tech story. Broccoli is an old school producer who understands that making one Bond movie every 3 to 5 years is the best move for the franchise.
Absolutely.
And Amazon pitched probably on day zero
TV shows.
A TV show. Multiple TV
spin-offs,
shows.
Prequels.
They want
Moneypenny.
They want Moneypenny on her own television show.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right? Okay. So here's the thing. Broccoli, 64 years old. She's a producer with MGM. She produces other things. She's not just sitting there twiddling her thumbs. But Michael Wilson is 82.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the verge of retiring. He didn't want to be involved in the day-to-day anymore. So now, 2 months later, Amazon has reportedly shelled out $1 billion.
Additional $1 billion on top of the $8 billion they already overpaid.
Now,
they're at 9.
Here's what I'm curious about. Yeah. Did the money go directly to Broccoli and Wilson, or did it go to did it go to MGM? Like, did they basically just bribe these two people, or was it an additional $1 billion to pad out the MGM acquisition?
I don't think it went to MGM. It either went directly to Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, or it went to like Eon Productions, which they are, from what I understand. So like either way, no matter how the check was written out, it is essentially Jeff Bezos backing up dump trucks full of money into Barbara Broccoli's front yard to get her to stop having control over this franchise.
I've never owned a $4 billion storied franchise that my father, ushered into the world after Ian Fleming wrote the books. Like, I've never been in Barbara Broccoli's position, but to read this deadline report to say that she's a fighter, quote, she's a fighter, but she got tired of fighting.
Yeah.
Is one of the saddest things that I've ever read in my life.
Like, I agree.
Like, ever read. Like, this is a woman whose legacy has been basically demolished now. And yes. I don't want to like be over the top here, right? But it is very clear that Amazon, as you said, backed up a truckload of money onto her doorstep. But like, they're gonna make the Moneypenny franchise now, or spinoff. They're gonna make the James Bond TV show. Amazon ruined the Lord of the Rings franchise.
Oh my god, I was ranting about this.
It is a bad show that they spent like
that no one watches. That no one watches. Who watches Rings of Power? Like, even if you watched season 1, if you tune back in 2 years later to watch season 2 of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, I want you to email in and tell me why. Because the only thing, not the only thing, but if you go to the Wikipedia page, I saw this yesterday. They're talking about, at the top of it, it's got the little like viewership and critical reception, right? They're like, oh, it was a very, season 1, most watched Prime Video original series according to Amazon ever. Generally positive reviews, but criticisms over writing and pacing, which are pretty important things in a TV show. Second season came out last year, met with lower viewership and a similar critical response. So not only did they not fix the writing of the show, they also, like, people were like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need to watch more of this. Which is exactly what's going to happen with James Bond. It's insane to me. No Time to Die made off, I believe it's $770 million globally. The James Bond Moneypenny spinoff that Amazon is gonna make for Amazon Prime Video will make $0. It won't make any money. Like, no one on earth is going to decide finally to sign up for Amazon Prime because they made a Moneypenny show. This is for no one. No one is going to, I would go a step further to say no one is going to decide to not cancel Amazon Prime because there's a Moneypenny show streaming now. It is such a waste of money, and they don't get it. Like, I don't know why they would do this, as opposed to, and we've watched this, right? Like, I think the reason that the response to this was like universally negative. I have not seen a single person on the internet be like, this is good, actually. Because, like, we've watched it with Star Wars. We've watched it with Marvel. We've watched it. I'm sure there are Lord of the Rings, right? Like, all of these things where everyone's just making licensed slop to keep streaming services afloat, to try to keep you subscribed. And it just ruins the mystique, right? Like, who's truly excited for The Mandalorian and Grogu next year, the first Star Wars movie, and to be theatrically released in 7 years when it comes out? Like, nobody, probably, right? Like, maybe some diehard fans, but not really. Like, the magic of Star Wars has been completely ripped out of it by it no longer being a theatrical series, right? Like, I would argue that's true for Marvel. Like, Daniel, did you rush out to see Captain America Brave New World last weekend? I didn't.
And I don't think anybody did, because the reviews were mid at best.
Look, it made money. I'm curious to see how it does this weekend, considering word of mouth on it is not particularly good. I think these tech companies do not understand that there is like a magic to something being limited, right? Like, and look, I'm not even like a big I've never been a James Bond person. It's not my franchise. There are bad James Bond movies, right? But there's still something about being like, oh, it's been 4 years and now a new James Bond is in theaters. I get to go see that. That's exciting. I'm so excited for Mission Impossible, what are we up to, 8 in a few months, because you only get those every few years, and this might be the last one. We don't know.
I mean,
like, right? Like,
I don't want to count out Mr. Cruise, but you.
Well, and that's the other thing, is that if they make another Mission Impossible after this, it's probably going to be because Tom Cruise is insane and is like, I know I'm pushing 70, but I want to go again, and not because Paramount, they're going to do a Paramount Plus show. Like,
but that's the thing. Tom Cruise genuinely cares about the quality of
absolutely
of the movies. He's a producer as well, right? Like,
yeah,
Amazon has no track record here in shepherding storied franchises, right? Like, nothing.
Not until Red 2 comes out.
Sorry, Red 2?
The sequel to Red 1.
What is Red? I don't even know what that is.
Red One. No. It's not called Red. It's called Red. You didn't see Red, the biggest blockbuster
Oh my
holiday
god.
movie of
Oh,
2024?
okay.
Red
Yes,
One.
I know what you're talking about. The one with the CGI bear.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
rocks
yeah,
in it.
yeah.
Market. Look, our audience demographics. Markets love the Rock in content. Okay, if we put the Rock in content, people show up.
The Rock is content. I mean, if there's he's just a unit. I don't think of him as a person. I just think of him as a unit of content.
He's can I be honest? I think he's flipping. I think like Red One broke him. His like next two projects are a new Safdie movie. It's not the Safdie brothers anymore. It's I think it's Josh Safdie. I'd have to look. Called The Smashing Machine that comes out I think this winter. And then yesterday they announced he's going to be in the new Scorsese film. Those are his next two projects. That's so much more interesting than anything he's done since like Pain and Gain, which is not a movie I like, but a movie I think he's really good in. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe he's tired of the slop too. But yeah, I don't know. I truly think if you're a James Bond fan, like enjoy what you had because the magic of this is going to be gone. They're going to wring every ounce of IP that they can out of this and it's going to suck. Like there's going to be a lot of I mean, we've already like Amazon has made one James Bond show already. Did you know this? Since they bought MGM. Did you
No,
know about the James Bond show Amazon made?
no.
They made a 007 reality competition show.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
hosted
right. I
by Brian
remember
Cox,
this.
who did not know that it was a reality competition show when he signed on to host it. Yeah, so that's already what they've done, right? Because that was the one thing they could do without the Broccoli's carrying. Apparently, it was renewed for a second series. This is news to me. It was renewed 2 years ago. When's that happening? It's a reality show. Why is it taking so long to come out? Anyway,
Okay, let's get back. Let's get back to gadgets. But
no, we're good on this. The point is that like you and I have talked a lot in this show and independently about the state of like television and media in general. And it is astounding to me that this world that we live in now, where it is mostly tech companies making the art that you are going to see, whether it's in a theater or tonight, Friday night at home in your living room. Like I think with a few exceptions, you cannot tell me that like the state of television is better than it was a decade ago, right? Like the state of outside of like very infrequent hits like success or excuse me, Severance, like it is very obvious to me that the algorithmic decision making that Amazon and Netflix and other streaming companies love to make is not working is not creating good art is what I'd say. Maybe it's making money, but it's not creating good art. And that's going to come to James Bond.
I, I think it's barely making money, to be honest.
Well, that's the other thing. Again, No Time to Die, $770 million. 007 Road to a Million. I guess technically lost $1 million because they had to give $1 million. Anyway, let's talk
Okay.
about Humane.
No, let's not talk about them until the
Come
end.
on.
Okay, fine. Humane AI sold to HP. It's shutting down. If you bought one before November, you don't get a refund. This is not surprising at all.
I'm shocked. I thought this was the future.
I know you did. We
$116 million sale, by the way.
It.
They were looking for HP to buy them for $1 billion last summer. Yep. 116 million.
But at least they got an exit.
This is the fate that this company deserves. Actually, well, like it is so funny to me that the Humane leads, the husband and wife that came from Apple, I can't remember their names off the top of my head, that pitched Humane and did this whole TED talk and just like some of the worst marketing I've ever seen are going to be working on bringing AI to printers, to HP printers. It is
so good.
It's a fate that I think the Humane AI pen earned. That's all I'm going to say.
So that's going away, and yet Rabbit is actually ironically debuting a better version of its agent that should have debuted a year ago.
Yeah.
So Rabbit's somehow still around, but
I'm surprised
Humane is going away.
But we'll see where we are in a
few more months.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazon is also we should have gone directly to the other Amazon story this week, which is that it's shutting down its Android App Store in August.
Crucially, not on its own devices, right? The Fire Stick, the Fire tablets, they'll still have.
Which is not an Amazon, which is not an, and I mean, it's not really an Android App Store. It's the App Store on a Fire. Like
Yeah.
there's no Android to speak of there, but it runs Android apps.
Right.
Which is an important distinction, is what I'm saying.
It is. It is. What's shutting down here is like when you could install the Amazon App Store on like a Pixel 9, right? Like that is going away, which makes sense to me. I would say that like the App Store was like kind of a failure in a lot of
Yes.
ways. Like I'm trying to think of, in to Amazon's credit, it did try at least like I don't think it tried to work with developers particularly well, but it tried to get audiences to download it. Like they marketed that you could get. And I swear to God, I can't find it, but I swear I remember a Super Bowl ad from like 2012 where they were marketing that you could get a free app a day, and that was the
Yeah, I
whole
mean, look,
thing.
they've been doing that with Prime Gaming, like giving away
Yeah.
free things makes you somewhere that you go, get the thing, and then leave very quickly. I will be the first to
Only
admit
reason. It's the only reason the Epic Game Store is installed on my laptop
correct.
because every Christmas they give away like 24 games, and I add them to my library when there's something I'm interested in, and I never play them. Truly,
Correct.
yeah. I'm
In
not
fact,
surprised. I also think that like their last ditch effort was to try to get some kind of momentum going with Windows 11 because they were when Microsoft announced Windows 11 and announced Android app support, the Amazon App Store was the app store for Windows 11.
yeah.
For Android apps, obviously they have their own app store, and no one used it, and it wasn't a particularly good experience. I know because I basically reviewed it, and that's shutting down next month. So it's I think that was just kind of like the last nail in the coffin for this.
Yeah. RIP in peace. Okay, two things that I'm pretty excited to talk about before we end. The
Yeah.
Oppo Find N5 is Oppo's new foldable. It's not coming to the US. The OnePlus Open 2 is not a thing. So this is basically what you get, but it's getting an international release in Europe and Asia. They just did a big flashy launch event in Singapore.
Yep.
It's expensive. It's about 1,800 euro. It's very good. It's a very, very good product. It's very thin. It's like 4 millimeters thin when open, 4.21. It's just under 9 millimeters when closed, which means that it's barely thicker than like a Galaxy S25 Ultra.
It's the same thickness as the Pixel 8.
Yeah.
If you've held a Pixel 8, that is how thick this foldable is.
And it's got the specs you would imagine. It's got a Snapdragon 8 Elite. It's got the 7-core SoC, but that really doesn't matter in day-to-day usage. It's got 16 gigs of RAM,
massive battery,
512 gigs of storage, 5,600 milliamp hour battery.
Insane.
Very, very, and it's got that newer silicon carbide tech, so that's how they fit it in to a very small chassis. It's got a 50 megapixel primary sensor. The ultra wide is not great. It's an 8 megapixel sensor. It's very small. I wouldn't really use it if I can avoid it. But there is wireless charging, which wasn't on the N3 or the OnePlus Open, which I like. And the camera itself, the main sensor is very good. So I haven't had any issues with it. It does have a periscope, a very small periscope telephoto lens, but it's still capable. It's a 3x optical lens. It's got a redesigned hinge that looks to be reliable. It's got an IPX6, IPX8, and IPX9 rating, and the crease on the inner display is still there, but it's very, very minimal. Like I've been using it, I don't notice it. The screens are good. The primary display is 20.7 by 9 aspect ratio, so it's basically the same aspect ratio as a regular device. You got an 8.12 inch OLED on the inside, both 120 hertz, both LTPO. So this is like a slam dunk. And what I like about it is that when I use it as a regular phone, I don't really think of the inner display. And then I'm like, oh,
Right.
right, this thing opens and then I can like watch YouTube or read a book and then I can close it again and it's just a phone. And I don't have to think ever that it's a foldable. And I think that is the biggest advantage of this form factor is that we're finally now at the point where you can just ignore the inner display if you don't need it.
Yeah. Which is why it's such a bummer that it's not coming here as the OnePlus Open 2, which we
Yeah.
should mention broke last week, but because we recorded on Wednesday, I believe it broke Thursday.
Right.
So
Okay. That's right.
we hadn't talked about it. I think we had even kind of mentioned, I think I had mentioned I was excited for the Open 2. And
Yeah.
then the next day my dreams were crushed.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm so jealous you have an Oppo Find N5 though. I'm truly like, this is kind of the foldable of my dreams. I'm now just like,
I will
go ahead.
eventually tire of this and then I will give it to you and you
Thank
will
you. Yeah.
but here's the thing. I'm already sort of tired of it and I want to explain what that means. I think this is the best foldable you can
Yeah.
use right now, but it is still held back in a number of ways. First, it does come with a case and the case is fine,
Mhm.
but it's still a foldable case, which means that it doesn't really protect it at all.
Right.
There is no dust ingress protection,
Yeah.
which I still have a problem with because I have children and I live in a house and I don't trust that this thing will not die at some point from my kid like randomly pouring sand in it, down the road,
Sure. Yeah.
which is a thing that could happen very easily.
Is there a lot of sand in your house?
There is
Do
in
you
the
have like a
summer.
beach room?
Exactly. Don't you?
When I was in college, the best bar in my college town would do a beach night every year around this time. Actually, it was
Like a
around the
tiki
dead
night.
of winter. No, a beach night, as in they brought in like hundreds of pounds of sand
Jesus
and
Christ.
covered the floor in sand. I never went to this in part because in terms of drinking age, there were only 2 years I could have went, and one of them I had graduated a semester early, so I wasn't there for it. I do have I have friends who went to it and said it was the worst thing they've ever been to. It was packed and hot, and you were standing on sand inside, but also it was cold out, so you had to bring a coat. It sounded terrible, but that is what I'm thinking of. That it's in your house. You just have a room that is like in Toronto. You can go to the beach anytime. It's just a spare
It's
room.
just in my it's yeah, exactly. It's
You have
just
you have
in the
your
corner of my
bedroom.
son's bedroom.
Exactly, bedroom, office, beach room.
Yeah.
Easy sand room.
Highly recommended. So this is pedantic, but this is very much a me thing. The haptic motor in this phone is bad. So the phone is so thin that they did not have space to put a proper modern tactile haptic motor. So it's one of
Right.
those old school buzzy gross haptic motors that I just find irritating. So I've gotten used to it a little bit, but I really miss it when I miss what you get on the Galaxy S25 or the
Yeah.
iPhone or basically any other modern Android phone.
Pixel has great haptics these
Yeah,
days, in my
it's just
opinion.
like because by default Gboard vibrates whenever you press a
Yeah.
key, it's like
Yeah.
constantly reminding me that it's not good enough. So I think that alone is annoying enough, like
That's fair.
not to use long term. But by and large, this is a very good product.
Yeah.
And as a lot of the reviews have said, and I would agree with this is sort of like the end game for foldable hardware. It doesn't get much thinner than this. I think we have agreed on the right form factor here, the
Yep.
right aspect ratios. You can't change physics, right? Like you can't make the cameras much better without
No.
making the camera bump thicker.
Same
And
with the weight, right? I mean, this thing is down to 229 grams, I
yeah,
think.
and
I
like
don't know how you make that lighter. Like, I don't know what you take out to get there.
so I have this. If you're watching the video podcast, I have the Pixel 9 Pro Fold next
Yes.
to here. Let me see if I can. Okay, so it's like noticeably thinner than the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, which
Yep.
is fairly thin.
Yeah.
and it's so much lighter. Like it
It is.
definitely feels lighter. You can tell.
That is, if I can get anything from a Pixel 10 Pro Fold, it genuinely might be like I'd rather them keep the chassis the same bulkiness and have them figure out a way to bring the weight down, because that's almost, to me, that's the thing that keeps me from using a foldable all the time more than the thickness of the device is the weight. Like I would
Yeah.
rather have, believe the Pixel 9 Pro Fold is 10.5 millimeters. I'd rather have that and have it be a lighter phone than have it be 9 millimeters but still be 250 grams. Like
I will also
that's a
say,
heavy
like,
device.
I've had this fold for, when did the folds come out, or the phones come out? August.
Yeah, August, September.
So almost 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's unclear to me if it's because I've just had the phone longer and I've used it almost every day, or if it's genuinely because it's just not as well made. But the crease on the fold is so much
Mine
more
too.
noticeable.
Mine is, I switched back to my 9 Pro Fold last week after the Open 2 announcement, where I was like, well, I kind of want to use a foldable right now. And I was kind of astounded of like, this crease is a lot deeper than I remember it being a few months ago, and I
Yeah.
don't know why.
I wonder if it's like, unless you use it every day, it's just not a, it's just a thing that happens to all. Like, I wonder if I were to get the plastic screen protector
Yeah,
replaced,
if it would be
if
better.
if it would be better. If
Yeah.
it's not like, it's not the glass that is formed like a permanent crease, it's the plastic. I suspect that that's what it is. Recently, the plastic started peeling on my Galaxy Z Fold 4. So I
Mhm.
went to the Samsung store and got it replaced, and it almost eliminated the crease. And that was on like a much older device.
I happen to have my 9 Pro Fold next to me, and the other thing I noticed is that for some reason in like roughly the middle of the device, the crease, for some reason, it's not even a straight line. It like kind of bubbles out and then comes back in, almost like something hit it,
Mm,
like it had an impact point. But I've been pretty careful with this phone. I've never dropped it. It's probably collectively been a daily driver of mine for like a month and a half since it came out total.
yeah.
So I just like, I don't know how it's aging. I also think, does the Find N5 have the same anti-glare finish that the original OnePlus Open had?
Yes, it's very
So
good.
that helps. That also helps. I think
It
the
does.
crease. I
Yeah,
think it
yeah.
helps
This
hide
is
the
not
crease.
like, this is not quite as bad as the original Pixel Fold, which was like,
No, oh my god,
you
no,
could
no,
like
no,
apply
night and day.
makeup on that thing if you wanted to. It was so,
The Pixel Fold was bad out of the box.
yeah, it was just a bad device.
Yeah,
This is fine. Like, I really, you would get used to this, but like, I barely acknowledge the crease on
yeah,
the Find N5. Okay, and the other product that I want to talk about, which you do have, is the OnePlus Watch 3.
yes. Where was this made?
It was made in China.
Mita in
It was
China.
Mita in China.
Do we have collect? They must fix this on future iterations of this device, right? Do we have collector's items now?
I think, I
Is
hope
this going to be
so.
worth a lot of
I
money
don't
someday?
think it will be worth.
If you haven't heard the what, it's I'm kidding, obviously, but if you haven't heard the OnePlus Watch 3, which we will talk about as an actual watch in a moment, on the back of the device does not say it was made in China. It says it was Meta in China, MEDA. It has obviously nothing to do with the device. It is just something funny that people on Reddit noticed. I will be honest, I hadn't spotted it because it's in very small font and I wasn't particularly looking at the bottom of the watch, but it is very funny.
I don't even know where it is. I'm looking for it right now.
It's you're gonna make me take it off. It
Take it off.
is, so if you see where it says OnePlus,
Yeah.
it's right below it to the left.
Oh shit. Okay. Mita in China. That's amazing.
It's pretty funny. It's a funny little typo. It has nothing to do with the quality of the device. It's just funny. I really liked the headline that we used for this story, which is, of course, the OnePlus Watch 3 has a typo that software updates can't
So, other than that product ruining typo,
fix. Yeah, 4 out of 10.
this is an amazing Wear OS product, mainly because when we kind of moved into the newest era of Android wearables with the Galaxy Watch 6 and the Pixel Watch 2 and Wear OS 4, Google and Samsung promised a lot of things. And one of those things, along with Qualcomm, was much better battery life. And that never really came to fruition.
I would say it got more consistent, right?
It
Like,
did.
you're consistently hitting a day on
Yes.
a charge, similar to how the Apple Watch has been since its, like, second or third iteration, but it never got better than that, really.
Yeah, like, I can use the Pixel Watch 3 and it will be at, like, 50% or 40% at the end of a fairly
Right.
busy day. I
Yeah.
charge it, that's fine. I went to Montreal and I got there on Tuesday, so I took it off the charger on Tuesday morning,
Mhm.
and by Thursday night, last night, it was at 34%.
I've actually seen even better battery life than that. Last week, I took it off on Monday, or when I set it up, it was at, like, it wasn't at 100, it was at, like, 94% because I had unplugged it from the charger, but I hadn't set it up over the weekend. So it was at 94%, and on Friday, and this was including, like, several workouts, although crucially, no GPS tracking because it's too cold to run outside. I've been running at the gym on a treadmill, but it did include several workout tracks, and, it was at, like, I think on Friday, it was down to 15, and that was with the always on display
Yeah, well,
on.
I worked out too with it, obviously, twice and a half.
2.5 times, not bad. What made you stop?
Uh, the fact that my chips ran out.
Your chips?
Yeah, the bag of chips that I was eating
The
ran out.
bag of chips that you were doing bicep
Well,
curls as you lifted.
I was doing one arm push-ups, and then, like, every other time I was putting the hand in the bag.
Um, my point is that this watch is quoted at being 5 days of battery life in the default OnePlus state, which includes the always on display off. And then if you turn it on, they quote it at about 3 days of battery life. And I'd say with it on, now I have it turn off overnight. Like, I think at 11 o'clock it turns off. And I'm also not wearing it overnight. I'm just kind of putting it is a little too bulky for me to wear overnight, to be honest with you. But I'm getting like 4 days, roughly 4.5 days on a charge with the always on display on, which is better than what they quoted. And combined with the fact that, like, the OnePlus charger is so much nicer to carry than, like, the Pixel
It's
Watch
so
charger.
good.
It's such a
I'm
good idea.
surprised how good this watch charger is. The magnets are super powerful.
Yep.
And they just lock into place. It's a single tiny little puck that is USB-C charge powered.
It's so much nicer than me having to, like, have a separate case. Like, this will probably become my, like, for sure, like, traveling watch. Like, I to be honest with you, I might not even need to bring the little puck anyway,
It's
because
so obvious to me that this is
yeah,
the solution, right?
it
Like,
is.
Apple and Google and Samsung all have these long cords
Yep.
that end in USB-C. You always have spare USB-C cables with you when you travel.
Yep.
Like,
I mean,
I
even if you
don't
don't, you can charge it. Something like this, you could bring the one cable for your MacBook, your phone, and your watch, and then just have the puck. And after 4 days, be like, oh, I guess I need to charge the watch. And I
for like
believe
10 minutes
an
or an
hour
hour.
gets you a full charge. I think I timed it, and it was under 70 minutes. I missed the hour mark, but I believe it went from like 10% to 100 and like 63 minutes on a charge. So you wouldn't even need its own cable, because you can just be like, I'm in my hotel room, like, let me throw it on the charger for a bit, and, like, you'd be good to go. Like, 20 minutes would get you through another day. So yeah, man, this, if you are looking for a smartwatch that has great battery life, and you don't want to spend money on a Garmin watch, like, this is a great middle ground, I think. And then beyond that, I haven't had any performance issues. Like, some of the weirdness with OnePlus's fitness tracking from last year is kind of gone. It's not perfect. I would actually say that, like, it's not particularly good at tracking treadmill runs. I'd be curious to see once it warms up how it does on a GPS run. But it's not terrible either. It's kind of in the middle. If you're just buying it to be a smartwatch, though, it's like, it's kind of the pick, as long as you can deal with the fact that it is massive. It's just a big
Yeah,
watch.
it's 40. So the reason the battery is so good is that it's a 46 inch. That's not what it is.
Got a
46
television strapped to my wrist.
It's a 46 mil display, and there's like a 400 and what's the battery? What's
I
the battery
think
size in there?
is it 600
It's
milliamps? Am I
something like
making that?
640 milliamps. It's
It
very
because it's
big.
using. Is it also using the silicon battery tech?
Yeah.
That yeah, like this is the future of OnePlus and of battery tech in general. But they're there now. I mean, there's been leaks of the OnePlus 13T, or yeah, T that it sounds like basically like a smaller OnePlus 13, like a 6.3-inch OnePlus 13. And that thing is rumored to have a 6,000 milliamp hour battery in it, which is the same battery size in the regular 13. Like OnePlus is destroying the competition in terms of battery size and doing
Yeah.
it with devices that are as slim. I mean, it's Oppo, but it's the same company, right? As thin as the Find N5. Like what they're doing with battery tech is leagues beyond anyone else.
And eventually other companies will
They will.
catch
They'll
up.
get there, but you know, Samsung is rumored to be doing silicon batteries for the S26 next year, but they could have done them this year. Those phones could have used a bigger change. So anyway,
Other than that, though, like this is still a very capable smartwatch. So it's Wear OS 5. It doesn't feel like the Pixel Watch has a much more kind of like fully featured or robust experience. The only
yeah,
thing that I can really point to here is that Google Assistant feels slow on this thing. Like, I know eventually Wear OS will get updated to replace the assistant with Gemini, but
yeah,
on the Pixel Watch, when you activate Google Assistant, it works and it works almost immediately. Here, if I ask it for a timer, it will take like 4 seconds to boot up and it won't always work. And it's one of those things where you can kind of tell that it's not a first party Wear OS
yeah.
experience,
It still has that, and it's Google's solution to this was basically to just stop working with third parties, but like it's got that like instead of buying a Galaxy Watch 4, I bought a Fossil watch, and it's a little
Yeah.
jankier than maybe the
It's
Samsung
not,
Watch
I
Lite.
would not call it as
No. It's
unreliable or
it's leagues
janky as a
beyond that, but
Fossil.
there are those little elements where you're like, this definitely isn't how it would work on the first party watch. But I
Correct.
don't know,
But
like
it doesn't really matter because
it doesn't matter.
if you are just primarily using it for notifications and like the occasional
Fitness tracking
fitness
and yeah,
tracking, and like it just like it's still Wear OS, which means that it's going to be a better experience than almost any other RTOS device that you
yeah,
would pair with your
absolutely.
Android watch. So, you get those robust notifications, you get all the apps that it supports. Honestly, I like the design. It's very simple. The
Yeah,
display is edge to edge. It's very bright. The OLED is
yeah.
beautiful. I don't mind most of the built-in watch faces, which I cannot say.
No, they're not bad.
It's they're not great. Like,
But they're not like again, they're not like Fossil or like I don't know, like they have a certain aesthetic to them that you may or may not like, but like there will probably be one that you can find built in that you'll be
too
like,
many of
I'm
them
happy
say
with
the
this.
word OnePlus. That's
Too
my
many of
biggest
them
problem.
Too many of them say the words never settle is the step further I would take.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say OnePlus, already a problem. I it bothers me. The one I'm using now has space for 4 modules, but instead one of the spaces is taken up by OnePlus never settle, and it's driving me nuts. Like
That's not cool. That's
it's
not
not
cool.
great, but otherwise I like it. There are other things. There's we didn't even mention like the last one. It's got that like ultra battery saver mode where you could go camping for 100 days. Or it's not 100 days, but it's like what is it 20 days
Yeah,
in
it's like
ultra.
25 days.
Yeah, so you could do the Garmin esque thing with it if you wanted to, and then also crucially, the rotating crown actually works now. It's not just a
I
fidget toy
cannot
anymore.
believe they released a watch with a crown that didn't
Two,
work.
two watches.
Sorry, you're right.
2
Two
and 2R,
watches.
both of them had a crown that spun but didn't do anything with the software. It does now. The haptics feel pretty good,
Yeah, they're
I'd say.
fine. They're
Like
fine.
I don't think they're like class leading, but they're not. To your point about the Find N5, like I don't think it feels like that. Like they feel good when I'm spinning through notifications right now. It feels good.
Feels good, man.
It's
Yeah,
a
I
good
mean,
watch.
I have
I'm gonna
very
review it
few
next week probably.
complaints. I
Yeah,
have very few complaints about it. And it's not too expensive, right? It's $350.
yeah,
It's a little more expensive than like the mainline Galaxy Watch,
But
but
this feels more like a
a
Apple Watch
classic.
Ultra
Yeah.
competitor or a Galaxy Watch Classic or Ultra competitor.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I
that's
would
what
agree
this
with
feels in
that.
line with. And compared to those, it's like half the price.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I wouldn't
not
say
bad.
that this comes close to the Galaxy Watch. Well, no, it does actually come close to the Galaxy Watch Ultra in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. I would wait until people who do those kinds of like really in-depth sensor
Yes.
tests to see whether it does as well as the Galaxy Watch Ultra for fitness tracking.
I don't think it will.
It
Like
probably
truly,
won't.
I have had just in my like the few treadmill runs I've done with it. I have and treadmill runs are tricky. I don't think my Apple Watch does perfect either. I don't think my Pixel Watch does perfect either, but this is the biggest discrepancy I've seen between what the treadmill is telling me and what the watch is telling me.
Yeah,
Still,
that's again like not a huge deal, but
no, I
you're
don't think
probably
so.
not
And you can
buying
also
this.
adjust all of that after the fact. If it tracks the wrong mileage, you can sync it back up. So
Yeah.
not the end of the world.
All right, that's what we had on the show.
We did it.
Notes. Oh, we wanted you wanted to talk about your Pixel Watch editorial or Pixel Photos editorial a little
Yeah,
bit.
but we're at an hour and 18 minutes.
Okay, go read the thing. It'll
Yeah,
be linked on
read it.
the show
If you're
notes.
bored this weekend, I should say, although this might not come out till Sunday. But yeah, go read it. It's not so much that I don't think the Pixel 9 takes good photos. I lead my piece by being like, here's what I said about the Pixel 9 Pro in August. I like this phone. I think it's more than anything, it is the most consistent like smartphone camera I think on the market right now. But just because it's consistent doesn't mean that I love using it. I the OnePlus 13 kind of cemented this, where that is a more inconsistent camera, but I have taken more shots with it that left me shocked at how they looked in a good way, like being like, oh wow, that's a really good shot. I'm really happy with how this came out. Whereas the Pixel, you know, is doing the thing that Samsung and Apple also are trying to do, where it's like, what if everything was evenly lit and there was not a lot of contrast, but you know everything was visible and you could see everything. And frankly, it's a bit of a boring camera system at this point, which was not always true of the Pixel series. And
Yeah.
so I kind of walk through the history of how Google has approached this. I think the Pixel 6 was a really big departure from what they had been doing prior to how they were working and thinking about computational photography. And I don't know, I'd like to see Google put some more effort into its camera system, because I don't think any major North American OEM is putting a lot of effort into their camera system. And I think there's space there for Google to come in and be like, we're going to shake things up and be once again the phone you are buying to take incredible photos. That's my take.
Yeah, I think it's true that Google got supplanted by the Chinese companies. Like the Oppo Find X8 Pro
Yeah,
takes better photos. The Vivo X200 Pro takes bananas photos.
absolutely.
Like it's just true that like you cannot get that on a Pixel,
Yeah.
a recent Pixel. So yeah, go read the piece. It's really good. We'll end the show on what's making us happy this week. You did kind of hint at
Yeah,
what you
I'll
would
float
pick,
it.
but
I
what is
have
it?
two things. I'll do my original, which is that I've been trying to be on social media less. I've been uninstalling social media apps from my phone, or even just making sure they're not on my home screen. Making it a little less easy for me to like muscle memory. Just not I'm not doing anything. Let me pull up my phone and go on Twitter, and it's been pretty good for my mental health. I'm surprised how I'm not missing it, because usually when I try to do this, I start missing it. And this time, I think things have just been so bad on various social media apps. It's not really a thing I'm missing. So I'd recommend that. And then in terms of like actual things, I believe the James Bond episode I listened to was behind a Patreon wall, but I will recommend it's not a huge podcast or anything, but it's a podcast called Going Rogue. It started out as a show about exploring the making of Rogue One and the behind the scenes mess that that movie had. Since then, it's gone into Solo. It's talked about the writer strikes when that was happening, and how certain movies and TV shows were shot during the writers' strike of 2008 or 7. It's talked about Gladiator and Gladiator 2. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this show. If you're looking for like a movie or even TV show podcast that goes into kind of the behind the scenes, it's hosted by Tansy Gardam. Yeah, big fan. It's called Going Rogue.
I am going to listen to this, particularly the
It's
Gladiator 2 episode, because
you should.
I do not understand how that movie was so mediocre. Like I would have understood if it was a really bad movie.
Yeah.
Because here's Ridley Scott just trying to do as much as he can before he retires. But like it's so mid, it's so mediocre that I have to believe that there's like a better cut out there somewhere, because that's something Ridley Scott has done before, but I don't think so.
I will warn you that the Gladiator 2 episode is less about the actual Gladiator 2 that came into theaters and more about the 20 years of trying to make that movie.
Oh,
you might
okay.
still enjoy it though.
I
Do you
mean,
know about the Nick Cave script?
Yes.
Do you know
yes,
Nick Cave wrote a Gladiator 2 script in the 2000s?
I do. I do.
It's fascinating. It's a fascinating history. There is, I think, I can just send it to you. But there is a like actual Gladiator 2 Patreon episode, but it's a little less scripted. But yeah. Anyway, it's really good. I have not seen Gladiator 2 yet, and you are not making me want to watch it. To be honest with you,
it's so not worth it. It's watch Gladiator 1 and then replace the good practical special effects with bad CGI and Russell Crowe with Paul Mescal, and that's exactly what you get. It's like a line for line recreation, but the script was rewritten with AI.
Oh god. Okay. That sounds bad.
That's the most succinct.
That's so disappointing because the Nick Cave script is nuts. It's about Russell Crowe going through like hell to get back to the
of course
world.
It is, because it's nuts. It's Nick Cave. I would have watched the shit out of that. All right, what's making me happy this week? I am going to admit this to the many people, the millions of people that listen to this show every week.
the 330 million people that listen to this podcast. That's right.
Every all of America, every single person, doesn't matter what political divide you fall on. I am doing the sourdough thing 5 years later.
Okay.
So in 2020, like most people, tried to make my own sourdough starter, and I failed miserably and I gave up very quickly. So a few weeks ago, I started making yeasted bread just at home for fun, just to try it out, and it worked really well. And I was like, let's see about sourdough. So I looked on Facebook Marketplace and I found a dude in my area who was selling sourdough starter, and I bought it. I'm not ashamed of that. I spent $10 on a nice.
I don't think there's anything here to be ashamed of.
So anyway, I brought it home and I followed a bunch of recipes and it worked. Yeah, and I was so proud of myself. And now I make sourdough almost every day, and it's cool. The best. It's so satisfying to start with water, flour, sourdough starter, and salt, and end up with like a beautiful, tasty loaf of bread that would have cost me $10 in the store. Like, there's really nothing better than that. And you put some butter or whatever on it, and it just tastes incredible. That is what's making me very happy this week.
Can I tell you? I think we didn't learn. We learned many wrong lessons from COVID. I would say one of the ones that we just didn't. That I don't think people learned enough was just like, it's fun to try new hobbies. Like, I think a lot of people spent those first 2 months being like, I guess I'll just try a new hobby, and didn't take anything away from that. But even though people clearly enjoyed doing things like exploring sourdough starters, you should be more willing to go out there and be like, I don't know, instead of sitting on my phone tonight, what if I started learning how to make sourdough bread? Like, I truly think that is a thing that like society would be better off if we were like, I'm bored. What's a hobby I can learn to do right now? I don't want to, not to out Maddie, but like Maddie recently, like over the last few weeks, started like learning how to crochet, and like a couple weeks ago finished her first blanket, which was her first big thing that she made. And it's such a nice blanket. Like the cats love it. I love it. It's so warm. It's so soft because it was made out of the type of yarn that you would use to like make like babies' clothes. It's washable. It's like an incredible blanket that she made out of yarn she went out and bought, and like I think that's cool as hell. Like I like the idea of finding and exploring new hobbies, and as I try personally to like kind of unplug a little bit more, that is something I'm trying to keep in mind.
I recommend bread
maybe I
making.
make sourdough.
Like it doesn't
Yeah.
even have to be sourdough bread because that is a little bit more complicated. But just the idea of taking an hour to like make a loaf of bread is like put on a podcast and just like follow the instructions. It's so cathartic, I have to admit. Like it's different from cooking. It's different from like baking a cake because you're kneading with your hands and you're kind of like getting in there. And because of the yeast, there's like an organic element to it. You see how the dough changes over time. It's kind of remarkable, I have to say.
Yeah. No, it's I'm into it. You might inspire me to do this, to be honest.
All right, that's the show. Thank you for listening. If you have any feedback for us or you have any thoughts on what we talked about in this week's show, especially James Bond or Cheddar Broccoli and his legacy, send it to podcast@androidpolice.com. And I would love to know if any other bread makers are listening, because I want to be friends with you.
Yeah.
And we will be back next week with a very special guest. We will not leak this this announcement. It's going to be kept under embargo. You're going to have to sign an NDA if you want to learn about it beforehand. But it's going to be a fun show. And
although I heard OnLeaks, if you follow OnLeaks on Twitter, they're going to leak it this weekend.
Yeah. I'll wait to see if it clicks with anybody, but I'm not going to tell anybody.
All right, wrap it.
All right, that's it. That's the show. Take care. Have a good week. We love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.